Does evil truly exist, or is it simply a shadow in the mirror of the human mind? If the universe is built on spiritual laws, why do we witness so much pain, war, and destruction? Today we embark on a journey, one that crosses ancient paths of wisdom, from Hermeticism to Buddhism, from mystical Christianity to Kabbalah, to unravel one of the oldest and most haunting questions of all time. What is evil, really? From the perspective of Eastern philosophy, particularly Hinduism and Buddhism, what we label as evil is often a byproduct of ignorance. Think of a child walking in fog who mistakes a tree branch for a monster. To the unenlightened mind, illusions feel very real. In Hinduism, this veil of illusion is called Maya, the grand theater of appearances that tricks us into believing that only the material world is real and that pain is permanent. But the sages of Advaita Vedanta tell us something radical. You are not your body. You are not even your mind. The suffering you feel is the shadow cast when you forget your eternal self. Adi Shankaracharya, one of the great Advaita masters, once said, "The rope mistaken for a snake causes fear until light reveals the truth." And just like that rope, evil dissolves in the presence of higher awareness. In Buddhism, the concept of evil is not centered on external forces, but internal tendencies, clinging, aversion, and most of all, ignorance. The Buddha didn't teach us to fear evil. He taught us to understand it. He said, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. What did he mean? That while pain exists, loss, death, disappointment, how we respond to these experiences determines whether they become suffering or wisdom. From this view, evil is not an enemy, it's a mirror, a reflection of the separation we feel when we forget our interconnected nature. And when consciousness awakens, when we truly see, the illusion loses its power. Now let's shift the lens to Hermeticism, an ancient esoteric philosophy that views the universe through principles, not dogmas. One of these is the law of polarity. Everything has its opposite, cold and hot, light and dark, good and evil. But what if they're not opposites, just different degrees of the same essence? If you remove all heat, you get cold. If you remove light, you get darkness. So too is evil not a force of its own, but the absence of understanding. In this view, evil is not a mistake, it's a function. Without the night, how could we long for the dawn? In Hermetic and esoteric traditions, the physical world is seen as a school for the soul, a crucible for growth. Suffering, adversity, and even the darkest moments are the very fires that forge consciousness. Just like metal must be tempered in flames, the spirit must face its trials to evolve. Zoroastrianism showed this through the battle of light and darkness. Taoism reveals it in the balance of yin and yang. And in Kabbalah, the world was created through a cosmic contraction, an intentional withdrawing of divine light, so that free beings could exist, choose, and evolve. From this angle, evil is not an intruder, it's a catalyst. Not something to fear, but something to understand. Now step into the heart of Christian mysticism, where evil is seen not as a being, but as a consequence of free will. In the Garden of Eden, humanity was given choice. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil wasn't a trap, it was a testament to freedom. Because love that can't choose is not love at all. God did not create evil, He created freedom. And with that freedom came the possibility of turning away from good. St. Augustine said, "Evil is not a thing, but a lack of good." Just as darkness is only where light does not shine. Even the story of Lucifer, once the brightest angel, reveals this truth. His fall was not the creation of evil, but the refusal of alignment with divine order. And yet, despite this freedom, we often choose wrong. Why? Because we are human. Because we are learning. The Apostle Paul expressed this timeless struggle. "I do not do the good I want to do, but the evil I do not want to do. This I keep doing." We carry within us both light and shadow. The journey is not about perfection, but awareness. Not about never falling, but about getting back up. This is where redemption enters the story. In the Christian vision, every soul can return. No matter how far we stray, the divine is always waiting, not with wrath, but with open arms, like the father of the prodigal son. Because evil does not define us, it only reveals how far we've drifted from what we truly are. The Kabbalistic view dives even deeper. In the beginning, all was light, but to make space for creation, the infinite had to contract, to allow for individuation. This contraction left behind a sense of separation, what we feel as pain, confusion, evil. Rabbi Isaac Luria spoke of the shattering of the vessels, the breaking of spiritual containers that couldn't hold the full intensity of divine light. We live among those shattered pieces, and every moment of pain is an invitation to gather lost sparks of light, to participate in a cosmic restoration. Suffering, then, isn't a punishment, it's a lesson in disguise. From this perspective, we begin to see that evil is not something to destroy, but to transcend. So how do we do that? The first step, know thyself. Carl Jung reminded us that the evil we see outside is often the unacknowledged shadow within. Healing the world begins with integrating our own darkness. The second step, choose consciously. Every small act of kindness, forgiveness, courage tips the scale. Evil persists not because it's powerful, but because good people hesitate to act. And third, use suffering as fuel. In Kabbalah, this is the path of tikkun, the correction of the soul. Pain returns until its message is understood. Once it is, we ascend. We become not victims of fate, but alchemists of our own transformation. True transcendence lies not in rejecting evil, but in understanding it. In Taoism, there's the idea of wu-wei, action without force. It teaches us not to fight blindly against darkness, but to move with clarity, redirecting its energy toward awakening. Anger can become courage, pain can become compassion, darkness can lead to light. And ultimately, the deepest lesson is this: what we call evil is often nothing more than the limit of our current perspective. The universe is not broken, it is unfolding. And behind the apparent chaos, a greater harmony is always at work. The question is, will we awaken to see it? Because the moment we do, a profound shift takes place, not just in how we see the world, but in how we exist within it. We begin to understand that evil does not need to be feared. It needs to be understood, integrated, and transmuted. This doesn't mean we excuse cruelty, nor do we accept injustice as inevitable. Quite the opposite. Once we truly see, we realize we are not powerless. We realize that every shadow we encounter within ourselves, in others, in the world, is an opportunity to bring consciousness where there was once confusion, to bring presence where there was once reaction. And in that moment, we stop feeding the fire and start becoming the light. This is the wisdom echoed by all the great traditions. In Kabbalah, it is said that when we transform suffering into wisdom, we are raising sparks, liberating divine light trapped in the fragments of broken vessels. In Buddhism, we learn that liberation begins not by changing the outer world, but by purifying the inner lens through which we see it. In Hermeticism, we are taught that true mastery lies not in choosing one pole over the other, but in finding the center point, the equilibrium, where transformation begins. And in Christian mysticism, we are reminded that redemption is always available, that no fall is final, that even the darkest night can give birth to the brightest dawn. So what does this mean for us right now? It means that every time we choose understanding over judgment, every time we choose compassion over blame, every time we respond with presence instead of reacting in fear, we are shifting the balance, not just in our lives, but in the collective field of consciousness we all share. Evil may present itself in many forms: violence, division, apathy, corruption, but its root is always the same: disconnection. Disconnection from our essence, disconnection from each other, disconnection from the sacred whole of which we are a part. But if disconnection breeds darkness, then connection brings light. And connection begins with awareness. Awareness that what we call evil is not a final destination, but a threshold, a place where something greater is being asked of us, a call to rise, to reflect, to choose again, because the power is and has always been in our hands. So maybe the question isn't, is evil real? Maybe the real question is, what will you do when you see it? Will you shrink from it, or lean in and illuminate it? Will you repeat the same cycles, or awaken to the deeper pattern? Because beyond every shadow is a lesson waiting to be learned, a wound waiting to be healed, a spark waiting to be reclaimed. This is the path of true transcendence, not to escape the world, but to transform within it. Because the spiritual journey is not about floating above reality, it's about diving into it, with your eyes open, your heart awake, and your soul aligned with something greater. True wisdom is forged not in avoidance, but in presence. We walk through the fire not to be burned, but to be refined. We face our shadows not to fear them, but to reclaim the power we've projected away. And when we stop resisting what is, when we meet the moment as it is, without armor, without filters, we begin to see the sacred even in the shattered. In every crisis, there is a crossroads. In every conflict, a mirror. And in every experience of darkness, whether it's betrayal, grief, injustice, or despair, there is a silent invitation asking, will you wake up now? This is not just spiritual poetry, it's practical alchemy. Because when we stop asking, why is this happening to me, and start asking, what is this trying to show me, the entire meaning shifts. We move from victimhood to vision, from avoidance to alignment, from reaction to revelation. This is the essence of the ancient mysteries. The Hermetic masters called it solve et coagula, dissolve, then recombine. Break down what is false and rebuild from truth. In Buddhism, it's known as the middle way, a path that avoids the extremes of denial and indulgence and leads us back to balance. In Kabbalah, every soul descends into this world to encounter the broken in order to become a vessel for divine restoration, to gather the lost sparks of light scattered in the fragments of experience. And in the teachings of Christ, it's the journey through the cross and into resurrection, not bypassing pain, but redeeming it. So when we ask, what will you do when you see evil? Understand this, you are not here by accident. You were born into this time, into this life, into this very moment, with your voice, your vision, your unique light, for a reason. And perhaps that reason is not to fight darkness with more darkness, but to become a living reminder that light still exists, that kindness still matters, that wisdom is more powerful than noise, and that love, quiet, steady, unshakable love, is still the most radical force in the universe. So now we turn the question back to you. When you see suffering in the world or within yourself, how will you respond? Will you run? Will you numb? Or will you stand in your stillness and say, I am here, I am listening, I am ready to bring light? Because the truth is, the world doesn't just need more people to fight evil. It needs more people to understand it, to face it without fear, to walk through it with grace, and to remind others through the way they live that transcendence is not a distant dream. It's a daily choice, to respond with clarity when confusion rises, to remain open when it's easier to shut down, to love in the face of fear, and to act with integrity when no one is watching. Because this is what it means to walk the path of awakening. It's not about being perfect. It's not about never falling. It's about how we rise, how we choose again. And in a world that often screams louder than it listens, the quiet strength of someone who chooses presence over reaction is revolutionary. Think about this. Every time you choose understanding instead of blame, every time you pause before reacting, every time you extend a hand instead of a judgment, you're not just shifting your own reality, you're shifting the collective field. You're adding light to the tapestry of humanity, a single thread of awareness woven into the whole. That may sound small, but the truth is, this is how the world changes. Not all at once, but one conscious decision at a time. And here's the secret most never tell you. Transcendence isn't something you achieve at the top of a mountain. It happens in the middle of ordinary moments, in conversations with strangers, in how you treat yourself when no one's looking, in the way you show up again and again, even when you're tired, even when it's hard. Enlightenment isn't a destination, it's how you live, breathe by breath. So yes, there is darkness, there is pain, but none of it has the final word. Because with every breath, you are given the opportunity to choose. And that choice, that power, is the sacred gift of being human. So now we ask you, what world will you help create? Will you be the echo of the old stories, or the author of a new one? Will you mirror the chaos, or be the calm within it? Because the truth is, we are all creators. And even in the presence of shadow, you can be the one who remembers. There is still beauty, there is still meaning, there is still light, but the world will not remind you of this. It will try to convince you that cynicism is wisdom, that numbness is strength, that closing your heart is the only way to survive. But what if that's the real illusion? What if your softness is not a weakness, but a superpower? What if your ability to feel deeply, to question deeply, to care deeply, isn't a burden, but a beacon? Because in a time of noise, clarity is rare. In a time of speed, stillness is rebellion. And in a time of fear, choosing love is the most courageous act of all. You are not here to disappear into the patterns of the past. You are here to interrupt them, to notice the places that hurt, and choose not to pass that hurt forward. to hold the pain not as a weight, but as raw material for something sacred. And yes, it's hard. Transformation always is. But the truth is, you were built for this. Every scar you carry is not proof of defeat, but evidence of your willingness to grow. Every time you broke, you also rebuilt, stronger, softer, wiser. That's not weakness, that's alchemy. So maybe the real path isn't to fight the darkness, but to become the space where darkness meets light and changes. Maybe we don't need more heroes charging in with swords raised. Maybe what we need are more quiet warriors of peace. People who are willing to do the inner work, to sit with discomfort, to meet others with compassion, especially when it's hard, to turn their own wounds into wisdom and their pain into purpose. This is how the world heals, not with grand gestures, but with small, steady moments of presence. A conversation that softens someone's heart, a decision made from love instead of fear, a moment of pause that ripples into something greater. You may never see the full impact of your light, but that doesn't mean it's not working, because every soul you touch touches another, and the energy you carry into the world becomes part of the collective field we all live in. So ask yourself, what are you contributing to that field today? What frequency are you choosing? What story are you telling through the way you live, love, and lead? Because you are not small, you are not powerless, you are part of this unfolding, and everything you do echoes in eternity. Every word you speak carries energy. Every thought you entertain shapes your perception. Every action you take becomes part of the larger symphony of life. So the question isn't whether or not you matter. The question is, how consciously are you showing up? Because your presence is affecting the world, whether you realize it or not. This isn't meant to pressure you. It's meant to empower you, to remind you that your awareness is sacred, that your kindness is a form of resistance, that the love you give, quiet, unseen, and often unacknowledged, is still shifting timelines. This is how true change begins, not with grand revolutions, but with inner ones. When you choose to break an old pattern instead of repeating it. When you choose to pause before reacting, when you forgive, when you listen, when you allow yourself to be fully human and fully conscious at the same time. Because here's what the ancient mystics, the sages, and the great spiritual traditions have always known. The outer world is a reflection of the inner world. When we heal within, we bring healing without. When we bring light to our own shadows, we begin to see the light in others. And suddenly, what once looked like chaos becomes a map. What once felt like suffering becomes a guidepost. What once felt like evil becomes a lesson in disguise. So don't wait for the world to change. Become the change. Not in theory, not in a future you hope for, but right here, right now. In how you treat the next person you speak to. In how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake. In how you carry your light, even on your heaviest days. Because you are not here by accident. Your soul chose this time, this place, this moment, to rise, to remember, to rebuild. And not just for yourself, but for all those who will come after you. You are a ripple in the great ocean of humanity, and your wave matters. So the next time you feel small, the next time you wonder if your light makes a difference, remember this. The stars don't compete with the night. They exist because of it. Just like you were not made to outshine the darkness. You were made to be the light within it, to flicker, to glow, to guide, not through perfection, but through presence. Because your light doesn't need to be loud to be felt. It doesn't need to be constant to be real. Even a single flame can warm a room. Even a quiet soul can ignite a revolution of hearts. So when the weight of the world feels heavy on your chest, breathe. Come back to this moment, to your breath, to your body, to the truth that beneath the noise, beneath the doubt, you are still here. And that matters, because some of the most powerful transformations don't begin with answers. They begin with stillness, with a whisper, with a quiet decision to stay open when it would be easier to shut down. You don't need to fix the whole world, you just need to tend to the piece of it that's been placed in your hands. A conversation, a choice, a child, a dream, a forgotten corner of yourself asking to be seen again. This is how light moves, subtle, intentional, unstoppable. And maybe that's the great secret hidden in the mess of it all, that what we call evil is not a wall, it's a mirror, asking us not to fight harder, but to see deeper, to see the places we've forgotten our wholeness, to see the parts of ourselves we've abandoned, to remember that healing doesn't come through force, but through connection. So when you stand before darkness, don't curse it, illuminate it with your awareness, with your compassion, with your choice to keep walking even when you're unsure of the path, because someone somewhere is watching you, not with judgment, but with hope, and your courage may just be the permission they need to believe again. In the end, your light was never meant to prove something. It was meant to remind us that even in the deepest night, the stars still shine, and so do you. If this video sparked something in you, share it, leave a comment below. Do you believe evil is real or an illusion? And remember, in every shadow, a spark of light waits to be found.